in Lesson 3. The date is from 750 to 1591. Our read to learn activity is what resources helped the empires of West Africa to grow wealthy and powerful. Our vocabulary: supply and demand, griot, Sunjata, Mansa Musa, Ghana, Mali, Timbuktu, Songhai, and Morocco. The read aloud. What did jewelry and coins from such places as Morocco, Spain, and the storage rooms of the Medici family in Florence have in common? The answer is African gold. From 900 to 1500, most gold in Western Asia and Europe came from the rich mines of West Africa. The resources from these mines would shape life throughout the Eastern Empire, most of all in Africa, for hundreds of years. The big picture. As new kingdoms grew in northeastern Africa, other civilizations developed on the savannas of the western Africa. These civilizations flourished while Baghdad's caliphs ruled a vast area in western Asia and northern Africa. At the same time, the Renaissance and the Reformation swept through Europe. As you read in Lesson 1 of this chapter, the savannas were a challenging environment for raising crops. Farmers could usually raise the sorghum, millet, and other crops that people needed for food. They could not, however, grow a very important item, salt. Salt was important because it could be used to prevent food from spoiling in warm climates. In other parts of western Africa, salt actually became its worth in weight in gold. Gold was another important item in West Africa. Much gold was bought and sold in the region's trade centers. Trade routes grew because of the need for salt and gold. These trade routes linked the empires of West Africa with the rest of Africa, Asia, and Europe. If you look at the top picture here, this is actually salt. So it says, in Ghana, empire people sold gold in solid blocks. In some African towns, salt is still sold in the same way. Other trade goods include spoons, boxes to hold gold, dust, and shells. And we'll talk about gold a little bit on this page. So it says Ghana, an early empire. By the 700s, the empire of Ghana was already a major power in Africa. Ghana was located at the southern edge of the Sahara between the Senegal and Niger rivers, the land of gold. In the 700s, Muslim traders from northern Africa first began arriving in Ghana. What they saw amazed them. One trader named Bakari described the king's court in Ghana's capital city, Kum Sali. So he said, behind the king stand 10 helpers holding shields and swords decorated with gold, and on his right are the sons of his vassal kings wearing splendid garments with gold woven in their hair. At the door of the pavilion are dogs guarding him. Round their necks they wear collars of gold and silver. Ghana's merchants were allowed to handle only gold dust. Nuggets of gold were kept by the king in al-Bakari. Explain the reason for this practice. If all Ghana's gold was allowed into the marketplace, he wrote, the people would collect gold until it lost its value. By keeping gold scarce, Ghana's kings followed the important rule of economics called supply and demand. Supply is the quantity of some good, product, or resource. Demand is the people's desire for that item. According to the rule of supply and demand, items that are plentiful in supply do not have high value because they are easy to get. Items that are scarce, however, are high in value because they are not easy to get. By keeping gold scarce, Ghana's kings kept its demand and price high. The rise of Mali. Ghana's kings controlled western Africa's gold supply for over 500 years. Eventually, though, other empires began challenging Ghana's power. According to traditional African stories, all but one prince in an empire called Mali were killed. Sunjata was spared because he was disabled and seemed harmless. The stories say that Mali's enemies, including Ghana, made a deadly mistake by misjudging Sunjata. He conquered his old enemies and all of Ghana as well. Sunjata died in 1255, but Mali continued to grow after his death. Look at the map to see how large Mali was at its peak in the 1300s. So if you look at the map on top here, at its peak in the 1300s, you would see Songhai, and here is Mali, and here is Ghana. From mine to market. Like all Ghana, Mali grew very rich by controlling the gold trade. In the 1300s, gold became more valuable than ever. Gold was mined in tunnels and pits throughout western Africa. Miners dug dirt and rock out of the ground. Women sifted the gold dust. Grains they found were then poured into hollowed feather quills or other containers and transported to Mali's market cities. One of these cities was Timbuktu. It was located at the crossroads of major trade routes near the Niger River. Timbuktu also bordered the Sahara and was a final stop for caravan routes that crossed the desert. In Timbuktu's busy markets, farmers sold vegetables and greens. Some bargained over the price of gold, salt, and northern African horses. Other traders settled the price of enslaved prisoners. Most of the enslaved people would be taken to Europe and northern Africa. So here is the city of Timbuktu. So it said it grew as a trading center near the Great Bend of the Niger River, located at the end of the Arab trade routes that crossed the Sahara. Timbuktu was the site of much cultural exchange during the Mali and Songhai empires. How did cultural influence combine in Timbuktu? So if you look at religion, Arab Muslims brought Islam to West Africa. The Sankore Mosque was built in 1325 while Mansa Musa ruled Mali. Yes, so they built a mosque. Then under trade, the trade that flourished between Africans and Arabs continue in Timbuktu today. While salt remains a popular item, many other goods are also sold. And then look at the architecture was influenced. So in 1830, watercolor shows how both Arab and African building styles were used in Timbuktu. Traditional African buildings are rounded, and Arab-style structures are square. So we have religious, they have a mosque, we have architecture as well. The life of the empires. In early 1300s, the best horses and goods were brought by the Mali king called Mansa Musa. During Mansa Musa's reign from 1312 to 1337, Mali was at its peak for wealth and power. Mansa Musa ruled with great authority. Nevertheless, he recognized at least one power as being greater than himself, Allah. The religion of Islam had been spreading throughout western Africa ever since the first Muslim traders arrived there in 700s. In 1324, Mansa Musa fulfilled one of the 5 pillars of Islam. He made a pilgrimage to Mecca. During the year-long journey, the king gave away gifts of gold to rich and poor people alike. How does the following excerpt by a northern African writer reflect Mansa Musa's power? So it says, when the king of this kingdom comes in from a journey, and an umbrella and a standard are held over his head as he rides, and drums are beaten, and guitars and trumpets well made of horn are played in front of him. When one whom the king has charged with the task of their assignment returns to him, he questions him in detail about everything which has happened to him from the moment of his departure until his return. Complaints and appeals against administrative oppression are placed before this king, and he delivers judgment on them. As a rule, nothing is written down. His commands are verbally given. The Songhai Empire. As Mansa Musa ruled Mali, a small eastern territory called Songhai was growing strong. In the next 150 years, Songhai rose to take Mali's place as the most powerful empire in western Africa. The empire of Songhai lasted from 1490 to 1590, so that's 100 years. Like the kings of Ghana and Mali, Songhai kings were all powerful rulers. Among most important assistants to the kings were the griots. Griots are people who can tell stories that describe historical events such stories are told again and again so people can learn about the past. Kings also made use of scribes. Scribes wrote official documents in Arabic. Why this all matters. In 1591, the Songhai Empire collapsed when it was attacked by an army from the north. This army used guns against the arrows and spears of the Songhai Empire. The army came from the African country of Morocco. Morocco had a long trading ties with West Africa. Its leader wanted to gain complete control of his trade and perhaps of the gold mines as well. The great demand for gold affected life for many people in West Africa. Gold played a part in the lives of the miners who recovered it, traders who brought it to the market, and the kings who used it to bring glory to their rule. Africa gold was also in demand in Europe. Gold coins in Venice and Florence helped pay for the great art projects of the European Renaissance. The empires of Western Africa were not only civilizations to spread African wealth to far-off places. In the next lesson, you will read about the busy port cities on the continent's east coast. Those cities had contact with places as far away as China. So here's our main ideas. Let's review it. The Empire of Ghana lasted from before 700 until around 1200. It was nicknamed the Land of Gold. The Empire of Mali ruled from 1240 to 1400. Timbuktu became a major center of trade. Mansa Musa ruled Mali from 1312 and 1337. Islam spread in West Africa during this time. And you could see that influence, remember, in Timbuktu in their architecture. They also had mosques. The Empire of Songhai lasted from about 1490 to 1590. Oral historians, or griots, and scribes kept records of events in the empire.